Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is JJ, I'm a reader, a writer, and I love to look at books from a writer's perspective. That's kind of one of those things that makes the reviews that I do a little bit different, as I'm looking at them both as a reader and asking the question of, did I enjoy this book? But I'm also looking at these books from the perspective of a writer, where I'm looking at how were they produced, right? From a publishing perspective, how was the book actually put together, produced, created? Additionally, I'm looking at how the book itself and how the author did their pacing, their plotting, their structure, all of the things that make a book so incredible, and what makes it work, what makes it not work, what they're doing that's unique to them that I haven't seen other people do very often. And today, I want to do a book review for Home is Where the Bodies Are by Jeneva Rose. This book, I'll put the cover here, I listened to it via audiobook, which may have influenced my perspective of the pacing and the structure and the characters, because when you're looking at something from a audiobook perspective versus just a physical book reading perspective, you're doing two things. You get both the author's voice, the author's success or failure in their pacing and their storytelling, but you also have, in an audiobook, the impact and the influence of the narrator and the narrator's voice, the narrator's perspective, the narrator's influence on whether something worked or didn't work. And that's one of those things that I think was really unique about this particular audiobook. Coffee break. One of the things that was so unique about this particular audiobook is that they had 4 narrators, one for each point of view character. Super interesting. Minor spoilers ahead from this point on. If you don't know anything about this book, let me give you a quick little recap of what the story is, because it's just stuck with me since I read it. And this book is about a family taking care of the final affairs and everything else, getting affairs in order for their mother, who has just passed away of old age, right? And this family, the dad disappeared a while ago. There are 3 kids, right? There's 2 sisters and a brother. The mom just passed away, and they've lived in this house that, like, their childhood home is the house where their mom died, right? And so this book is looking at how all of these characters are interacting with each other, how they're all dealing with their own grief, and it's also looking at the complications of what it means to go home for some people once you leave, right? So, like, one of the sisters, she stayed put and she cared for their mom all the way up until the end. She was there when she died. The brother went off to California to go be successful in his business stuff, his tech degree. And the other sister is a drug addict. And she had a lot of issues that she had to work through. And all of them, so they've all been kind of estranged from each other because various different things fell into place to stop people from either sticking together or interacting with each other. Relationships were broken, etc. Right? So, couple things. First of all, this book, super interesting premise, right? They're all coming back home. All of them, all of these estranged siblings are coming back home to deal with the mom's affairs, right? Going through possessions, reading of the will, all of that. The burial, all of it, right? In the process of going through the house, they discover old home videotapes, right? VHS tapes, even, of their childhood years and growing up. And one of the things that they find when they pop one of these videos in, just to, like, kind of relive their days as kids, is at the end of the tape, there's footage of their dad standing over the very dead body of a girl who went missing when they were young, saying, "Oh, you're still recording. You have to, like, turn that off. Stop recording this right now," right? And so this book is kind of looking at the mystery of what happened to that little girl, what happens when you find new evidence for a very closed case, right? Her body was never found. She went missing. Nobody really knows what happened to her. This family was, I mean, it was their neighbor, right? Their neighbor's little girl who went missing. And so this family was involved in the search team for this little girl. They combed all of the woods everywhere to try to find this little girl. Now she's missing. They couldn't find her. That neighbor still lives in that house. So there's some of that tension too. Like, do you tell them, right? Like, they didn't move away. Do you tell them that, oh, we found new evidence, or do you just let things that are already dead and buried stay dead and buried? And that's one of the biggest themes in this book is, do you dredge up the past? Do you talk things through? Or do you pretend that nothing ever happened and move on with your life? And the impacts of both of those. And one of the things that Jeneva Rose does so incredibly well is the setting in this book. The setting takes place mostly in their house. It is mostly, I mean, there's a couple times where like the brother and the other sister go off to try to find their dad, because one of them has been sending emails to their dad this whole time. She gets an email back. So the siblings, Beth, Nicole, and Michael. Beth is the oldest, Nicole is the middle, Michael is the one who is the youngest, and he also went off to California. Beth stayed put to help care for their mom. Nicole is the drug addict. Okay. Now that we're all caught up. Oh my goodness. Okay, so there's all of this tension and drama between Beth and Nicole, because Beth has been there to see the impact of Nicole's addiction. Michael hasn't. There's also tension between Beth and Michael, because Beth stayed and Michael never looked back. He never came back. He said, I'm out of here. And he was just gone, right? He went off to college and then he built a life for himself, and he was just gone. Nicole has been trying to put herself together for years almost at this point, trying to get herself back on track. And it's been a hard run for her, and she keeps falling back into that addiction because she doesn't really have the support system around her to make sure that that doesn't keep happening. In the midst of all of this body, the evidence of this body is discovered, right? And one of the things, like I was saying, that Jeneva Rose does so incredibly well is that the setting of this book is 90% their childhood home. Most of the book itself, like there's one or two scenes maybe. There's two scenes out at the doctor's office for Nicole. There's one or maybe two at a local bar and tavern. And then Michael and Nicole go on a drive to another town nearby to go try to find their dad, which is where the email seems to have come from, right? Pretty much everything else takes place on their property, and mostly in the kitchen and the living room. There are a couple moments where there's like flashbacks to the town at large from the mom's perspective, but mostly it's all taking place in this very limited setting with the clues that are available within that very limited setting to try to figure out, why did the parents hide the body of this girl? Why did they get rid of it? Why didn't they tell their neighbors that were their friends? Who actually killed the girl? Was it the dad or was it somebody else? And what on earth did the mom mean on her deathbed when she was dying and her last words were, "Don't trust," and she didn't get to finish her thought? This is the delicious mystery of this book. And even more complicated is just the nature of the setting and the storytelling. This is I would call it a slow burn, right? It's very slow, but the intrigue draws you through. It's very much a family saga story. So if you don't like family drama and you don't like the intrigue of unwinding these interpersonal relationships, you might not enjoy this one. It's not very high action. There's action in the climax at the very end of the book, but there's not a whole lot of intensity or action. There's not even a whole lot of sleuthing. It's mostly the interpersonal debate of, do we call the police? Do we tell the police? Do we tell the neighbors? Do we let it rest? Do we act like nothing happened? Do we just move on with our lives? Do we bury mom and just all go our separate ways? Like, there's a lot more of that internal debate than there is external action, which is why I'm so impressed that I was hooked and drawn in so immediately. I'm not the kind of reader who usually enjoys slow-paced books. I tend to enjoy high action, high movement, high intensity. Like, I love, like, if Marvel movies were books, which I know they are comics, but if they were books, that's the kind of thing that I tend to gravitate toward. So the fact that this one hooked me and did not let me go until I finished it, right? Like, I binged it straight through. It's an 8-hour audiobook. I binged it pretty much straight through over 2 days. It was incredible. I was making up excuses to keep listening to my audiobook, right? Like, okay, I'll go on another walk, or okay, I'll keep doing the dishes, or I'll put my laundry away, right? Because I just wanted to keep listening to figure out what on earth happened to these characters. And that is one of the coolest things, I think, about certain types of writing and certain audiobook production, right? So, all of that being said, I adored this book. The way that Jeneva Rose laid the twists in place, so that, again, looking back, and this is always the trick of writing a good mystery novel, is that all of the clues are there. You just, as a reader, you see them, but you're not allowed to understand them just yet, right? You see what's happening, you see this interpersonal drama, and even for Jeneva Rose's case, especially in this book, to have the murderer be a point of view character is so interesting. It's such an interesting dilemma, and it's something that I, in my own writing, have been struggling with, of how do you tell the reader enough to let them care about this character in the midst of everything of what they're doing without telling them what exactly they're doing, right? Because in looking back on it, you can see all of the points where the murderer, where, again, I told you, spoilers ahead. I guess I used the phrase minor spoilers, but genuine spoilers now. Where Michael is twisting his sister's perception of each other, where he's twisting the truth, where he's jumping on opportunities to drive them apart and kill time, right? Because Michael is playing against the clock. The sooner that he can get his siblings off of this property, the sooner that he can get people away from this property, the sooner that he can get everything taken care of with his mom's affairs, the better, right? For him, he can go back to his life. He can continue to literally get away with murder. On the other hand, his sisters have a conscience where they want to tell the neighbors, they want to tell people what's going on, they think that they should call in the cops, and so he's kind of playing against them this whole time, right? Of, why should we do that? What is the point of that this whole time? Because he's trying to wear down the clock, because in a week they have to have a decision about the house, they have to have a decision about the funeral, and they have to move on, which is one of the most interesting ways to put that time element of suspense into something. Because in suspense, there always has to be some sort of deadline, which works really well in mystery novels. In a mystery novel, typically, if you don't solve the case in a certain amount of time, the clues go cold and the murderer gets away, right? So there's an urgency to the action. The same is true of this one, but that urgency is coming from an external force, not necessarily from a murderer potentially getting away, which is such an interesting way to twist that requirement of the genre to some extent. And I love it so much. It's a very compelling read. I highly recommend it. Like I said, I binged it in approximately 8 hours. I just went straight through. And it's the kind of book that, again, that I've just been thinking about. I also was really impressed by, and this is something that I've been noticing on a lot of the books that I'm reading recently. But this book in particular, Jeneva Rose, is very good at giving you the character's perspective of the truth as they see it, and saying that in as blatantly clear words as is possible, right? So in the middle of all of this dialogue, you get all of this also internal monologue. And in that internal monologue, you're also getting their thoughts on what is morality, what does it mean to come home, what is the right thing to do here, do we dredge up the past or do we leave things be, right? All of that is happening in such a way that, I desperately wished on many occasions that I had a physical copy of the book to highlight my favorite quotes in and go back to, and I'm probably going to go buy one so I can read it again and do a study of the pacing, because I'm so impressed by how Jeneva Rose wrote this plot line in such a internal monologue focused plot. To keep the tension going, to keep the reader stuck on the page, I want to mark the places where there are high action and also where there's new questions introduced. Because I think those questions are the things that really let us see where she was trying to take us, right? And that combination of asking all of these questions, introducing all of these problems, and then introducing a way for the characters to solve them, and getting everybody wrapped up in their own motives as well. Every single character had very clear motives. Beth desperately wanted to honor her mom's last wishes. Michael desperately wanted to keep his secret safe. Nicole, by the end, just wanted another hit no matter what it took to get it. And that ended up saving her. That ended up saving Beth. It ended up saving everybody, because her desperation brought her to the bank to impersonate her sister, to open the locked box where their mom left things, and there was a confession letter in the lockbox of the bank, that was able to send Nicole back to the property with the police to stop Michael from killing Beth. Crazy ending. Very interesting ending. Just absolutely insane type of ending. Incredible book. So anyway, if you're looking for a less gruesome, slower burn, this is what I would call domestic suspense as a genre. It's very much a suspenseful read where there's not there's a mystery going on, but it's not like a murder mystery, and it's not really like it's not a cozy book, right? It's not funny, it's not lighthearted, but it is a very good reflection of real life while still being compelling. And so, especially if you're trying to dip your toe into suspense, but you really love more like literary fiction or just general contemporary fiction and storylines, domestic suspense would be a good place for you to start. And this book, a fantastic place to start, especially because the audiobook is available from the library, which is how I listened to it. I love using Libby to listen to my books. Libby and Hoopla both have really a wide selection of audiobooks and ebooks. So if you're looking for ways to get more books now, that's all I travel with anymore, is just my phone, because I can download books to my phone all the time, whenever, no matter where I am from my library district. It saves me a lot of money, and it still supports the authors, and I get to listen to and read fantastic books. Even the ones that I'm getting, like that I have on my bookshelf, sometimes if I'm going on a trip, I'll still I'll get the book that's on my shelf in an ebook form from the library, so that I can read it wherever I am. Anyway, that is my review of Home is Where the Bodies Are by Jeneva Rose. It's so good. And if you like twisty family dramas that also have an element of suspense and that are rather intense, this is a good one for you. Have you read this book? Have you read anything else by Jeneva Rose? Because I just went on Goodreads and saw that she wrote a couple other big books that I've seen around that I haven't read yet, that I've thought about reading, but that didn't sound like my cup of tea, and that now I might have to go try, like The Perfect Marriage. I might have to go try that one. So, anyway, have you read her books? What do you think? Did you like this book? Also, this book had a lot of reflections on death and grieving. So if you have any if you want to hear some, I guess just as a content warning, this book had a lot of reflections on death and grieving. So if you're going through it or you know somebody who is, this book could be very helpful. It could also possibly be a little triggering just because of the nature of how the characters are dealing with very fresh grief of losing their mom. Until next time, I will see you then. Let me know if you've read this book. Let me know if you like this book. I'm going to try to keep doing a lot more book reviews on this channel. I really have enjoyed diving back into BookTube in this regard. I'm trying to post a lot more often again in 2025, so we'll see how that goes. However, I also will need more book recommendations. So if you read in suspense, or if you have any middle grade or young adult that you just loved that you want somebody else to talk about with you, put it down below and I will try to add it to my list. Okay, until next time, I'll see you then. Bye!